Which defenses should you target and who should you avoid for Week 13 of the NFL season? I'll go over all of that in this week's episode of Pick 3 DST. As a reminder, these are not my full weekly DST rankings, but you can click the link below, which will take you to the article that I'll update as the week goes on when we get injury reports and weather updates and things of that nature. And I do have my rest of season rankings over on NBC Sports, so if you want to look beyond Week 13, head over there under the fantasy football section and check that out. We are going to start this video, as we always do, with our accountability check in what was an admittedly poor Week 12 for our video picks. Our stud defense, the Minnesota Vikings, had a solid score of 7 points, but they gave up 17 points to the Bears in the fourth quarter, which really kind of torpedoed that score a little bit. Our solid defense, the Commanders, dropped the ball and scored just 4 points in an outright loss to Cooper Rush and the Dallas Cowboys. And our sleeper pick, the Los Angeles Rams, put up 0 against the Eagles, plus the defense we faded as a top 10 option, the Dolphins, finished as the 5th ranked defense on the week. So really poor performance overall. We are entering that weird stage of the NFL season where teams' motivations tend to wane. We get to see a lot more backups play on some of the teams that are out of contention. So there are some weird scores that we saw last week and might continue to see, but we'll try and right the ship and get back on track here in Week 13. My sleeper defense for the week is the Indianapolis Colts. Consensus rankings have them down at 22nd, but they are my 10th ranked defense of the week. Now, it's hard to pinpoint exactly how good this matchup is against the Patriots, but we know it's not a bad one. Coming into last week, the Patriots had allowed just the 17th most fantasy points per game in games that Drake May had started, so they were a slightly below or above average matchup. However, their offensive line got manhandled by the Dolphins on Sunday, and they allowed 12 fantasy points to a pretty mediocre Dolphins defense. So it's possible that those early Drake May games were a little bit of a fluke. Meanwhile, the Colts held an explosive Lions offense to just 24 points and sacked Jared Goff 3 times. Over the last 6 weeks, the Colts ranked 9th in turnover rate, 12th in pass rush productivity rate, and 13th in opponent scoring rate, while averaging 7 fantasy points per game. So they're a slightly above average defense in a slightly above average matchup, and so I think that makes the Colts a decent shot to sneak into the top 10 this week. Before we get to my solid defense of the week, pause this video and comment below. Let me know which defense you're starting this week, or ask me any start-sit questions, and I'll get to those as the week goes on. My solid defense of the week is the Seattle Seahawks. Consensus has them at 11th, and they are my 8th ranked defense of the week. Now, the Seahawks have really turned things around over the last few weeks, and that's to be expected after they hired defensive-minded coach Mike Macdonald in the offseason. Over the last 6 weeks, they rank 4th in opponent scoring rate, 7th in turnover rate, 10th in forced incompletion rate. That has helped them average 9.6 fantasy points per game over the last 6 weeks. Meanwhile, the Jets are allowing fantasy defenses to score 6.3 points per game over the last month, which is smack dab in the middle of the league at 15th overall. The Jets don't turn the ball over a lot, but Aaron Rodgers has taken 8 sacks in his last 3 starts, and this Seahawks defensive line did sack Kyler Murray 5 times last week. So I think they can get after him a little bit. Rodgers is allegedly playing through injuries that he doesn't want to get scans of. He's really immobile in the pocket, so I think the Seahawks can get after him a little bit. The Jets seem perpetually embroiled in chaos since Rodgers has been there, and the Seahawks really need this game for their playoff chances, so I think the Seahawks are going to continue their strong run of late. My stud defense for Week 13 is the Houston Texans. Consensus has them at 4th, and they are my top-ranked defense on the week. Over the last 6 weeks, the Texans rank 2nd in turnover rate, 9th in opponent scoring rate, and 10th in pass rush productivity rate, which has allowed them to put up 11.5 fantasy points over those last 6 weeks, which is the top mark in all of fantasy football. They're also potentially in a smash spot against the Jaguars offense that has given up the 2nd most points to opposing defenses over the last month. Now, Trevor Lawrence did practice on Monday, and it is possible that he comes back and starts over Mac Jones, on Sunday. However, that's not a sure thing yet, and the Jaguars really don't have anything to play for, and Lawrence is clearly not 100%, so it's unclear if they'd really rush him out there to get him back on the field. If they do get Lawrence on the field, I might downgrade the Texans defense a little bit because the Texans did also lose stud safety Jalen Petrie to a multi-week injury, and that's a really big deal for them. I don't know that it's really going to matter this week against the Jaguars, even if Lawrence is back, but it's something to keep in mind for the Texans going forward. If Lawrence doesn't play, the Texans are locked in at my top spot this week. If Trevor Lawrence does play, I could see moving the Texans down to maybe 4th or 5th, but I really can't see them dropping outside of the top 5 for me this week, so I think they're a really strong play in all formats. The defense I'm fading for Week 13 of the NFL season is the Tampa Bay Bucs. Consensus has them 8th, and they are my 17th ranked defense for the week. Now, I know the Bucs are playing the Panthers this week, so it's shocking that I'm suggesting that I'm fading them. However, did you know the Panthers give up the 7th fewest points to opposing fantasy defenses over the last month? Bryce Young looked really good in that near upset over the Chiefs last week, and it wasn't just a one-game blip. The Panthers have been playing much better offense over the last 3 games. On the season, the Panthers also rank 5th in the NFL in sack rate allowed. So they're not giving up a lot of sacks, and now that Bryce Young is making better decisions in the pocket and not extending plays and taking poor sacks and not turning the ball over as much, it's been a lot harder to score fantasy points against the Panthers. Meanwhile, over the last 6 weeks, the Bucs ranked 23rd in turnover rate and 27th in opponent scoring rate, and they've scored just 4.6 fantasy points per game over the last 6 weeks, and that includes their solid performance against the Giants last week. I know it's a little bit of a risky call to fade the Bucs here, but this feels like a trap game for the Bucs against a Panthers offense that's looking much better, especially considering the Bucs lost safety Jordan Whitehead on Sunday to a potential season-ending injury. That's going to take some of the bite out of the secondary here, and so I just don't feel as confident in playing the Bucs as consensus rankings do, and I think they're going to finish outside of the top 10 this week. That's going to do it for this week's episode of Pick 3 DST. As a reminder, click the link below to check out my rankings, which I'll update as the week goes on. Also, like and subscribe to get this video and all of our football and fantasy football content over at NBC Sports for the rest of the NFL season. I'll check you back next week, and good luck on Sunday.